Hey, welcome guys. Today, as you can see, we have the AMT US Enterprise, the E version. Now, one thing about this kit is this is one of those kits that I started and stopped several times. I think I first started it well over a year ago, probably closer to 2 years by now, where I just started doing parts of it and just for whatever reason, just lost interest in building and had put it away. So a lot of my original video, I don't even think I have. I might have even deleted it because I didn't know when I would finish it. So I'm not finished yet, but I have finally decided to start trying to push through and get this kit done. Now the box is empty because I have a lot of sub-assemblies done. The only thing extra that I purchased for this kit outside the original kit is this Aztec Decals, as you can see here, and creation models, and this is the Nemesis version. So I'm not too worried about the version, trying to make it specific. There's a lot more other YouTube channels, a lot of builds on YouTube of this particular kit. So this would be my build. Probably the best series I saw was over at TrekWorks. Boyd does a really good job of really getting all the little things down. Mine's a compromise of I won't be having near the effects. I'm just not going to worry about all that. I really just want to get this done. You know, it's been kind of a pain in my side. So I'm just going to break down my sub-assemblies and try to explain what where I'm at with it right now. All right, just going to start off with the work on the Wart cells, how I did each of them. As you can see, it's put together, including our pylons that go up and hold it in place to the secondary hole, if I'm getting all those terminologies right. Anyway, the first thing you have to do is, like, this piece up here is solid. This is 2 parts to the Wart cell on each one, and so you have to cut away a section to light it up. Over here you have, I think it's called the chiller grill, maybe I'm wrong, but it's a transparent part. It comes in clear. I just took some of this tester's transparent blue and did several coats. Now I probably should have sanded it down to diffuse the light more. I forgot to do that. I've added in coats there and painted that. And there is some detail painting. I believe the spine of this is actually a separate color, so that will have to be painted sometime, but several coats of transparent blue on that. Same thing with the Bizarre collectors. They were clear parts. I forgot what type of paint I had to use, but I used transparent red and painted those all in there. Now, the way I'm lighting it, and one of the things that kind of waited on, when I finally found this cob LED lighting, it looks like it's one continuous strip. If you really look, there's a bunch of LEDs in there. They're just really close together. A little bit better than the regular tape we get. I forgot what channel I first saw this on, but just pretty neat. And I thought this would actually work better than some of those other LED strips. And again, that was the cob LED lighting. But as you can see in here, I'm just running one strip and it goes all the way into the front. So it's going to do all the lighting for my Wart cell. And I'm going to have a fiber optics and we'll have light here, but I'm not going to worry about the strobing lights or the marker lights on the pylons there. That's one of the compromises I did. It was getting too much. I see there's some reflective chrome tape in there to help bounce that around. And I'll probably put in some kind of wax paper or something to further diffuse it, but it does diffuse pretty good. You have a very narrow pylon. It is 2 pieces, but you have to channel it out. As you can see here, I have some very thin wire, and I'm using this 24 AUG wire. I forgot what this is called, but it's a coated wire, and you take a lighter and you just kind of melt away the coating to expose the very tips of it. As you can see, I've done here. And so that made it a lot easier to channel through and bring this all the way down to where I can have some wiring into the body. So all that checks out. Let's see if I can kind of give you a brief example of the lighting. I believe that's correct. No. As you can see, that's really bright, so I probably need to diffuse that, but it is lighting the front of that really well. Throw this on, I'll kind of get the effect of it. So we may have to diffuse that a little bit more. So that's what I did on both of my pylons with the blue, transparent blue, red, and the lighting. All right, now moving on to the top part of our saucer section now. One of the very first things I did, as you can see here, is I drilled out holes. Now, I'm watching TrekWorks, you can see that this isn't really necessary to drill it all out. Because this is made of a white plastic, it's very translucent, and you can actually illuminate it from the inside, light block it from the outside, and then take, once you paint it, you scrape away, since you have some recessed windows, you just take a scraping tool of some sort and scrape these windows away. I probably would have did it that way. I just wasn't thinking when I started, so I ran and started, and so that's how I've done all of the painting. I'm sorry, how I've tried to do all the windows is just physically open those up. And so that took quite a while. I spent several days. That's probably why it kind of burned me out, is it took a while to do all this on the primary and secondary holes where all the windows were at. And so basically just use some micro drill bits. Kind of like these to open them up. And then I think I used a Dremel to kind of drill in like the top and bottom of the window. They're kind of a rectangle look. And then just use the Dremel to chisel away and open those up. They're not perfect, but they're okay, I guess. And so anyway, those are done, and on both of the holes. Looking on the underside now, since I am lighting this and there's going to be some bright lights in here, I did light block it. There was first a black kind of primer coat inside here, and as you can see, I now have a gloss white paint also to reflect the light inside. Now in here on the top part, I have most of my markers. I do have a strobe. You can see where these are clear parts for the impulse engines where I painted red. There's an extra piece of plastic that I also did red, just like a double filter of red, because I'm just using the white light to illuminate those. You can see where I've already masked them off because I'm getting ready to start painting or attach this and start painting. However, I just want to show inside here, you can see a bunch of different lights going on. These are for my marker lights, and I do have a strobe. Now I put the strobe here, and I should look more closely. I think it's actually supposed to be up here. So, but there's going to be a strobing light here, and then I have a green marker light, my red marker light, and the clear on the very front. On these, I use some UV resin to fasten them in place. TrekWorks shows, I got that idea from TrekWorks, how to take your fiber optics, you use UV resin to attach it, and then I painted over to light block it so I don't have a bunch of green and red filling in these windows. I also painted with some acrylic paint the actual fiber optic. You can see they're kind of sticking out right here. I'll trim those after painting, but they're pretty effective. I didn't want use the black paint, not so much the green coming off the UV, but all the bright light actually overwhelming the green and causing that to be a lighter color. This is a control for strobes. You can get these on the eBay to say it works from 5 to 24 volts, and you just put it in from your power. Your power goes in on one end, and then you have these different modes. You can strobe, flash, flicker, different types of modes. I've got all the modes to them. Then you can adjust the speeds. And so that's going to my strobe light, causing it to strobe at the speed I want it to go. It's all coming here where it connects to some power, and that will come in. Now this isn't meant to illuminate the windows. Let's see if I can get it going here. Can't see it because I have it light blocked. But you can see here where I got my green light going. You can see our strobe. Now I'm going to put a fiber optic. See if I can get this to focus. I'm going to put a fiber optic here, and I'll bring that light to the surface. That's the LED underneath that plastic there. You can see our red marker light, and of course the front. Don't worry about light blocking that because it's going to be the same color as the internal lights. So that's the top section of our saucer. All right, here you can see the bottom section of our saucer is already attached to half of our secondary hull. You can see all the holes that have been drilled in to our secondary hull, and there's also holes drilled in, the windows drilled out for our bottom of our saucer section. And the reason I did that is I want to go ahead and line up my holes from my saucer section. Some of the wires will be 2 wires, the bottom half wiring and the top saucer section wiring. Sorry, let me get this in focus. This is just black hot glue. This is just kind of where a lot of wires are coming in, holding them into place and insulating them from each other. Originally, I just did like a single, hoping that would kind of light up everything, and just didn't seem like I was getting too much dark in some of the parts of the section. So I've added in a couple more strips of this ultra bright LED tape, and that's all just coming and attached. And I also have a couple of LEDs. These are 3mm white LEDs kind of firing toward the impulse engines just to give those a little bit more light. I don't know how much good. I probably should have moved them up closer because I don't think they're really adding too much to that. So, and that is kind of it for this section of it. You can see the lighting. And that is the bottom of our saucer and half of our secondary hull. All right, here you can see the other half of our secondary hull, and there's just a press fit on one of the Wart cells. You can see where I've already put in some paper towel. Just when I paint this, of course I'll have the blue parts off. I'll have to mask the red off, but that's just to keep paint from getting in there. That will be removed at some point. Again, it's just press fit, pressed very tightly in there. You can see how the wiring's coming out there, and you have to drill kind of a hole in here. Also, you can see the LED strip that's going to be lighting our secondary hull. Now, probably won't light any of the windows that I cut off in here. It's just not going to get back there very far. I'm not going to worry about marker lights on the very back or anything. But I have this ultra bright set of LEDs that will also illuminate. Oh no, they're not going to illuminate the dish. I did something else with that I'm actually still going to change. So that's how that will go in there. We'll probably have some gap. We'll have to run some kind of putty right in here once we do glue that together. And the same for the bottom, just kind of fill in that. A little bit of cleanup. There's quite a bit of cleanup when you glue these Wart cells. You'll have some pretty good seam lines coming in through there. So that's it for the other half of our secondary hull and one of our Wart cells. So this is our deflector dish, and this may be changed right now. As you can see, I drilled out a little bit, and it has a orange, I think it's 5mm, or maybe it's 5mm LED in it. And then I put some black hot glue around it to light block it from spilling out into the secondary hull. But it was painted with some transparent orange, and then I dry brushed on some brass over the dish. But I'm just not happy. I think the light's too focused, so I may have to redo this. I'm trying to think of options on how to do that. But that will, of course, fit into this part. I think it's keyed. Yeah, it'll be part of that. This is one of our parts here. Don't see if I can get a light test on it real quick. And so it's not bad. It just doesn't really, the light takes up too much of the very center and doesn't really spill into the rest of the dish like I had hoped. So I may have to work on something else for that. It's not terrible. I'm just not 100% happy with it. Of course, there's some other parts. This is goes on the top part of the dish. This section goes right here. There are some windows in here. I am going to light some of these in windows, but as far as these, some kind of observation deck, it's right on a seam, and it's just kind of really flat, and I don't think it's going to show very well, but I am going to light it. I'll have to put some lights right here, and I just cut out a little bit of a strip of some of these ultra bright LEDs that will sit back here. And of course, that will go through the body. So I have a lot of wires that will come through. Of course, there will be a mounting rod right here at some point. I'm going to figure out when to, I want to connect all that. But my plan is from here to go ahead, all the wiring's now attached except for this one that I'll show you. Once I get that attached, I can start attaching all of our wires together, run it out of the body, start connecting the body, and well, I think that I'll come back once I get this all put together, because it's going to take a lot of work just get this all wired up without getting too bunched up in there. And we have, this is the piece of the kit. I've drilled it out to fit a brass hollow rod, obviously, for our wiring, but this will need to go in here at some point. I believe it goes like that, and we'll have to make sure that's securely in there, so I may have to epoxy it somehow. I'm not sure. The trick is I'm going to have to run the wires through there, so I can't really attach both halves and put this in there. I suppose I could attach all the wires and run through, attach the hole, and then glue this in there, but I'd really like to have something at least partially on the inside. So I may put this partially on the inside and use some two-part epoxy to secure that in there, because all the weight's going to be on that right there, on that one point. And it's gaining quite a bit of weight. It'll be pretty balanced once the Wart cells are in there, but still, it kind of worries me a little bit, not being able to secure both sides of that. So that's where I'm at, and we'll get it all put together, and we'll come back once I reach that point. All right, so after quite a bit of work and a lot of frustration, a number of setbacks, I finally got this put together. Good news is that my lighting is all working at the moment. I had some issues with that. Remember that wiring I used for the Wart cells? It was causing the lights to go off, and I really had to jiggle the wires around. I don't know, I didn't have any shorts that I could find, or just something about that wire. Maybe it's not meant to be right next to another wire. I don't know. If you have any idea about that magnetic wire, why it wasn't working, let me know. But I did manage to get it to where it was working. So at the moment, everything was working, but also just had problems getting everything fitted together. Maybe it was the way that I did and went about joining. I probably should have did the secondary hole as one piece and then attached that. That probably would have been better. While putting this on, my top and bottom section of my saucer came apart. I had to re-glue that, go back over gaps and seams that I had repaired once. So I know that I'm going to have to do more body work on this, but I did quite a bit. It's all glued together now. It's ready for my support rods, which I'm using this brass tubing. It's already sized in there. Everything's masked off, so I'm going to be priming it. I know there's areas I need to light block, so what I'll do is put on some primer, go back on with some black on these sections right here. I didn't light block these, and they light up. They actually glow pretty bright, so I'm going to prime them and put some black on them, then re-prime them gray. But once I prime it, I'll see all the little areas that I'm going to have to address. I know there's quite a few. Some areas that I'd already started filling with using this plastic putty, acrylic resin plastic putty from Vallejo. I did a number of sections, mostly around the Wart cells. I had a pretty big gap around the quantum torpedo launcher that still needs some cleanup. You can see where the putty's in there. I know there's a little bit of gaps in here, but I'll go ahead and prime it, see where I'm at, and start addressing all the body work. All right, well, here is our Enterprise all primed up and ready for painting. I did about as much body work as I'm going to do on it. It's far from perfect. There's a lot of little flaws here, but I just want to get this project done. It's not been an enjoyable project for me. I don't know why. I just haven't really enjoyed this project, though I like the ship. Hopefully I'll be glad when it's all done, but there's still a lot of work to do. So from here, I'm just going to apply a base coat and just going to keep it simple. I'm going to try this Toasty Gray by Bear Paints, premium paints. And it's kind of an off-white color. It's really white. It's not hardly gray at all. It's just more of an off-white. So It's a gloss coat, so hopefully that'll be good for our decals when we go to put those on. So we'll get that painted up and we'll see how that looks. All right, well, I have my base coat on, and again, using this Behr Toasty Gray Gloss Spray Paint. I'm always a little worried about using these for a base coat. You don't have that much control. There's a lot of paint. I found that just doing a nice steady coat, not too light, not too heavy, just enough for the paint to come out in a smoothness, kind of a smooth texture as I was going around. The paint did a real good job of settling down, and really happy with the color. I think it's coming out a little bit whiter on screen than it is in person. It's actually more of a kind of a tannish color or white gray color. So I think it'll go good with being a good undercoat for all the decals. There is a bit of detail painting left before we can get on that, and I think I'm going to go ahead and put some clear canopy glue or Elmer's glue or something to go ahead and close those windows up so that don't get holes in our decals as we're putting those on. And so, but a little bit of detail painting. I know around the impulse engines, there's like a dark gray color on this inset area. I think the shuttle bay door is a different color. I'll have to look. I think the decals will cover most of that. So I'll have to there's a lot of decals to put on front and back. All the names and there's a ton of decals. So that's going to take a long time to do all that. So, but I think this gloss coat would be a good base for it. It's pretty smooth to move the decals around. I think that's going to be kind of the key, is being able to move those decals into position before they settle. Everything's looking good, and we'll just keep moving. All right, so I'm pretty close to starting applying the mini decals. I did a little bit of detail painting here, did the reaction control thrusters. I think these are in yellow, and I just used, the only kind of yellow I had was this transparent yellow, but it did a pretty good job. I think the color looks pretty good. I did kind of a dark gray around the impulse engines, and that was just a mix of some black and light gray. I didn't really have a dark gray on the hand. Now with the phaser banks, I just took a metallic marker, and let me get it for you. This is a coppered color metallic marker, and just kind of carefully colored in the phaser strips, and that worked out pretty good. I find that these metallic markers work pretty good on a gloss coat surface. They don't work so good on a flat surface. That flat surface tends to just absorb the paint in. Now this still has to dry quite a bit. I'll probably give this a few days of drying before I put any other coats on. Still have a lot of decals. Decals, I'm not sure if they go on top of that or not. Still a little bit more detail painting here and there, but I'm going to go ahead and start applying the decals. Now I did, as you can see, the windows are darkened in, and I just went along with my some of this Tamiya, I believe that's Tamiya, Panaline accent color, and filled in all the windows that aren't lit. Anywhere it kind of bled over, I just took a Q-tip with a little enamel thinner and cleaned that off. Now I did close up the windows. I just took this dropper with some PVA glue, watered down a little bit to thin it out, and closed in all my windows so the light would diffuse better on the windows. So from here, just start working on the mini decals. I think we'll go ahead and finish up the project, and when we come back, we can look at that, and I'll explain what are the steps I took to finish this project. All right, well, here's my finished AMT Star Trek Enterprise E in 1 to 1400 scale, and gotta tell you, I'm glad to have this project done. It was a kind of a labor of love. I love the ship, and design is probably one of my favorite Enterprise designs. But it was a lot of work, a lot of frustration. Again, I started and stopped this project probably over the past year and a half, 2 years. First started out just drilling the windows. That was a lot of work, just drilling those out. As before, I kind of was aware that you can scrape the windows. In hindsight, I probably would have attempted to just scrape the windows, as I've seen Boyd on TrekWorks do, and get a really nice effect. Because drilling is no matter how careful you are, some of the windows just aren't exactly the same, and you can kind of notice that if you really look closely. But overall, I'm really happy with how this turned out. Now that it's done, I can look at it. I'm pretty proud of it. It does have a lot of little flaws here and there. It's not perfect by any means. It doesn't have all the lights and that you would see on the studio model, but it's overall, again, I'm just happy with how it turned out. Now, I finished up with the applying all the decals, and I used a combination of the A Creation decals, I hope I'm saying that right, and the kit decals. The A Creation decals, there was some good and bad to them. They really did good as far as their sturdy decals, because there's a lot of manipulation on some of these where you put them on, and there's always that one that kind of gets folded and twisted up. I didn't have any problems really with them breaking apart. I was always able to kind of flatten it out and get it where it needed to be. I did use some Mark Setter decal solution underneath before, so I had to have to move around. You do want a nice gloss coat when you start putting these decals, because there's just so many decals. About 95 to 98% of the model is decals, and you need to be able to move them around. So, but the A Creation, they were easy to put on. The way they kind of give them to you, you don't even really, they give you an instruction sheet that's a little small and hard to follow, but just the way you can see that this is laid out, you can tell exactly where they need to go. And now I use of course, the A Creation and all the, I guess, Aztecing design throughout the ship. But I did use the kit supply decals, mostly on these darker brown parts around the upper part of the saucer section. One of the reasons I went with that is they actually had clear spots for all the windows that are right here, and I like that. The A Creation did not have that. Here is the A Creations version, and it's very nice. It's got a bit of different kind of detail to it, but I liked that these actually had the windows cut out, so I used those. For the lifeboats or escape pods, whatever you want to call them, I used the kit supplied. They're a little different than the A Creation. There's the A Creation ones they give you. In hindsight, I would have gone with these, because these started off good, but then about halfway through, several of them started breaking apart, and I ended up kind of having to mash them together, and that's always a pain. Whereas I didn't have any problem with the A Creation decals on the small, large of them breaking apart like that. I don't know why I did that. I didn't have any problems with these decals, but there's just decals all over. There's decals on top of decals. Many hours. I would just work on it like an hour here and there, putting decals on, start up the top. Then I started on the bottom, because I know that's the part that you don't see, and if you start on the top, you may start skimping on the bottom. So I forced myself to start on the bottom. Then when I get to the top, the part that where you look at most of the time, you're kind of forced to, if you want it to look good, to take your time with it. But it all turned out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the lighting, how it came out. A little tricky getting the wiring coming from here and getting the Wart cells. And of course, you see it's on display base. I just used the kit supplied stand, painted it up with silver or chrome and gold, just spray paints. And it took a couple of coats to kind of get that shiny. Probably looks a little bit more shiny on the screen than it actually is. And then just took one of these hobby boxes that you get from like Hobby Lobby, painted it black, and that way I could run my wiring and stuff all on top of that. So anyway, let's turn the lights on. Just have a regular switch, and you can see here, happy with how all that turned out. And that's all just running off one, that Cobb LED light strip running through here, just painting these lenses. When you apply the flat coat, that helps diffuse the light too. Put in a little fiber optic up here running down, also just running off of that one light strip. So that was an easy way to do that. You don't get the blinkies and the flashies and the marker lights. You probably could run some fiber optics down there if you wanted to have some lights in there. I do have my red and green marker lights, running lights. I have my little strobe. My impulse engines are lit. They're not super bright. Probably could have did a little bit brighter, but I'm going to go ahead and cut this above light off so we can get a better look at it. I think the window lights came out good. They're not overpowering. Sometimes if you put too much light in there, it just starts having this unrealistic look. So pretty happy with that. See if I can turn around. Right now it's just being powered by a 12-volt rechargeable battery pack. And we can see our deflector dish light and the lighting underneath the saucer. I think that turned out pretty good. It has kind of a bicolor because I fixed that 5mm orange light, and then it's picking up ambient light from inside the secondary hull to kind of give the yellow painted deflector dish that kind of dual tone. It's kind of hard to make out in the video, but it's much more defined in person. And then of course we have the hull lights. So all that I think turned out pretty good. Now this section right here, they give you a clear part, and I left it lit. I don't think that's really supposed to be lit. I guess that's the shuttle bay or a shuttle bay. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. Let me know if you know exactly what that's supposed to be. And it really wasn't my intention to light it, but when I added a light into this section to light these lights around here, it was lighting this up, and I just kind of liked the effect, so I left that. I thought it looked pretty cool. It's not overwhelming or super bright, but just kind of gives a little bit of a lighting source. Now I will say I'm using those Cobb LED lights, and they do tend to heat up a little bit more than I'm used to, so I'm not. You may have to diffuse that down or step that down with a resistor if you go with the Cobb LED lights, because I'm picking up a bit of heat right here more than ever have with any kind of LED strip. It seems like this one more than the other one. I don't know why that's happening. So I'm just kind of keeping an eye on that, but probably wise to step this down from not 12 volts. I think technically it's supposed to be 5 volts or something like that, so I'm probably way over what I should be on that. So of course, after all the decals and everything, I put on a flat coat and used this clear acrylic coating mat. And I got this Hobby Lobby. It's $8 a can. You get a big 11-ounce can. It does a really good job. It's one of my favorite clear coats. Plus, it's acrylic. I like the fact that it's not an enamel base, so it's a little less stringent on your decals. But it did a really good job of flattening out our base coat and protecting the decals. And I just put in a couple of thin coats on that and really toned down that gloss coat. Again, my base coat was this Toasty Gray by Bear, and I thought it was a nice match for the color. You got to have a lot of decals on. That's going to kind of alter the way that paint looks. You're just kind of getting the base. Just did a good job of giving us that color. It laid down well. Didn't have any issues with it, dripping or cracking or anything like that. So pleased with how that came. Easy way of painting a model without getting your airbrush out and spending hours trying to cover every little crevice. So anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm very pleased that I'm now done with this. Definitely was a labor of love getting all the lighting, and the decals are probably the worst. Just decal after decal after decal. You have some really small ones around the phaser banks, and it just takes a while to get, top, bottom. You got decals all around the Wart Cells, the pennants, your ship markings, all that. But it all came together, and I think it looked good. And I'll be glad to put it on my shelf to display it. So thanks for joining me. Until next time, everybody have a good one.